Hello guys, Winston here. My custom Shapeoko CNC project has been dragging on for far too long now, and until I stop futzing around in Fusion 360 and start taking some concrete steps towards making this machine a reality, I'm just going to keep kicking the proverbial can down the road. It's time to shoot the engineer and start production. Here's where I currently stand with the Frankenoko and what's next for the project. In my last CNC video, I worked on the gantry rail for my custom Shapeoko. I needed to machine some features like mounting holes to add hard stops and a homing switch, but really I was just looking for an excuse to give the X-axis a lightweight aerospacey look with an eye-catching hexagon pattern. In conjunction with the salvaged Y-axis rails of another previously modified Shapeoko, the approximate form factor of my CNC was locked in. The Frankenoko would be an XL-style machine about twice as wide as it was deep, but the foundational structure of the machine was still an open question. I knew for sure I wanted to ditch the sheet metal style frame from the Shapeoko 3. That sheet metal design was innovative for its time because it was easily scalable for production requiring no machining, perfect for a scrappy CNC startup, but it didn't scale well in the dimensional sense. The wider the machine got, the more flex there was in the frame. When it came time for a new generation of machines, the Shapeoko 4 and Pro had Y-axis rails that were rigidly attached to a series of hybrid table base tubes, and had what were essentially cosmetic plates capping off the Y-axis extrusions. This design was much stronger and resistant to bowing across the width of the machine because these tubes have a closed cross-section and thick walls. Even though they're aluminum, they're still way stronger than the steel straps on the Shapeoko 3. By the way, internally at Carbide 3D, we call these extrusions Nomad tubes, because they were first used on the frames of the Nomad 883. So that's how I'll be referring to this profile from here on out. This Shapeoko generation was a quantum leap forward in terms of providing a structurally sound foundation for the machine. However, this strength came at a cost. The way the Y-axis rails were attached to the hybrid table required extra standoffs and custom hardware, and it also necessitated accurately machining holes through the Y-axis extrusions, which I didn't want to take on. So I ended up mashing together elements of both the Shapeoko 3 and 4. I would connect the Y-axis rails to a pair of Nomad tubes by using steel brackets bolted onto the ends of the Shapeoko extrusions. Originally, I had over-engineered these connecting brackets as machined parts with a ledge that would create a repeatable separation between the perpendicular extrusions and ensure that the Y-axis rails were equidistant from the bed. But after prototyping a set of these and fighting the aluminum plate stock which wanted to curl and pop off the vacuum table of the Datron as I removed material, I realized this was the wrong approach. Simpler was better. Using laser-cut steel plates would be more in line with the historical ethos of the Shapeoko being an affordable, mass-produced workhorse CNC router. It would allow the left and right brackets to be identical, and I could outsource these parts easily. To present more surface area to bolt things together, I would rotate the Nomad tube so the taller face was flat against my steel brackets. This would let me fit 2 rows of M6 holes for mounting, and it also put the tubes in a stronger orientation to resist sagging. Slotting the holes in my steel brackets would afford me some margin for error in assembly since I didn't know how accurately I could machine the M6 holes in my Nomad tubes. Upon my Frankenoko frame, I had originally planned to implement a hybrid table. I planned to steal some hybrid table extrusions and work them into my base structure. And of course, I also wanted to make some improvements to the Carbide standard implementation. I designed custom MDF slats to go with the hybrid table that had a recessed tail, so you could machine level the work area without leaving a raised lip that would prevent you from loading oversized stock. I extended and chamfered the front of the MDF to stop anything like a vacuum hose from getting caught on the aluminum extrusions, and I included multiple mounting holes to attach the MDF directly to the hybrid table extrusions. This pinned the MDF and the aluminum together, allowing them to act as a stronger composite beam to resist deflection if a heavy load was applied to a single slat. I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty happy with these improvements, and I was excited to make this machine table a reality. But then I ended up with a salvaged Shapeoko 3 threaded table, and letting this beautiful plate of aluminum end up in the scrapyard was just too painful a prospect. As someone with a mild hoarding problem, I knew I just had to find a way to integrate this into the Frankenoko. And after reverse engineering this table in Fusion 360 and bringing it into the Frankenoko project, it appeared to be a pretty good fit for my work area. The width was almost perfect for the X-axis travel of the machine, but it would still require a lot more work to pull this off. First of all, the threaded table wasn't quite deep enough to completely span the Frankenoko in the Y direction. The original Shapeoko 3 frame attachment points were meant to be on the inboard flanges of the sheet metal straps. This didn't line up well with the relatively narrow real estate I had available on top of the Nomad tubes, so I would need to mill out brand new mounting holes. The plan was to machine a new set of mounting holes sized for M6 hardware at a regular 100mm interval. Because these would live very close to the edge of the table, I would blow open the counterbores to eliminate any thin-walled sections. And if we're being honest, the original threaded table kind of skimped on holes, so I added a bunch more right up to the edges of the work area. And just like my original plan with the custom hybrid table MDF slats, I plan to machine down the unreachable region at the rear of the threaded table. So that was the plan. Now to make it real. I first started with machining the Nomad tubes since the stakes were much lower here. I have several spare Nomad tubes at my disposal from old decommissioned machines, but threaded tables are few and far between. I designed and machined a jig in some MDF that would hold the Nomad tubes. The point of this fixture was to allow me to use the HDM like a big CNC bandsaw, ensuring perpendicular cuts. While I had the stock clamp down in this setup, I also machined the pre-tap M6 mounting holes. At the time, I didn't think I'd be making a bunch more M6 holes, so I didn't invest the time into working out a good thread milling recipe. These holes would just be tapped by hand. Disclaimer alert here, this particular bit of machining was done like 2 years ago, before my well-intentioned project plans were waylaid by home ownership. This early iteration of the Nomad tubes allowed me to test fit the Frankenoko with some of my previously machined parts. I learned a couple lessons here which I would use to later improve the design. We'll cover some of those changes in a future Frankenoko video. Let's fast forward to the present day where it's time to perform Op 2 on the Nomad tubes on the Shapeoko 5 Pro. To ensure my Nomad tubes would be perfectly lined up with the machine axes for this phase, I cut a straight line in some scrap MDF to serve as a fence. Then, referencing that edge, I used some crush-it clamps and stops to hold a Nomad tube upright. I bored a series of through holes that were meant to be tapped, which went off without a hitch. There are more holes than I technically need here because I'm leaving open the option of reverting back to a hybrid table if that somehow proves advantageous. Next, I took a stab at thread milling. I'm using a Datron thread mill for this step, or if you prefer the title in the brochure, the more delightfully named, though not technically accurate, thread whirler. Thread whirling generally describes a lathe process that uses an annular cutter to make precise threads quickly. By using multiple teeth positioned around the circumference of the tool, you end up with high productivity while balancing out the cutting forces and deflection, kinda like with pinch turning. But lathes are witchcraft, and we really need to get back to the world of milling. With my thread whirler loaded in the spindle, I crossed my fingers, hit cycle start, and just watched it. No machinist stance, just hoping for the best. The moment a thread mill plunges into a hole is always the most terrifying. You're never 100% sure if the cutter's dead center on that hole when watching it from a safe distance, so you're half expecting the thread mill to crash into the material and shatter on contact. And then, once the thread mill does engage the material, there's no going back. You can't pause and retract the cutter until it's finished spiraling its way out of the hole. If something goes wrong, you just have to ride it out. Some people might try to dial their feed rate down to like 10% and hold out hope that they could stop a catastrophe before it happens, and they might be right, but I was just kind of in the mood to YOLO it. And to my relief, first contact with the material went just fine. To take it extra easy on the tool, I opted to do the threading operation in multiple passes. And then, after the program successfully ran its course, I tested the holes and found that my threads were binding, so I tweaked my fusion parameters until I got things to fit just right. I know there's like calculators and spreadsheets out there for this stuff, but sometimes it just feels easier to wing it. Eventually, I had satisfactory threads, perhaps a touch tight, but they would hold strong, which was the important part. I swapped out one Nomad tube for another and repeated this program a second time. And then, after one more cycle start, these were done. Now it was time to tackle the threaded table. With a good thread milling recipe in my back pocket, I felt pretty confident going into this phase of the project, but there was still one aspect about the impending machining operations that I was a bit nervous about. Boring holes into the Nomad tubes was the easy part, because after a depth of 5mm, the end mill has already broken through to the inside of the extrusion, and all of the chips will naturally fall through. There's almost no risk of aluminum gumming up the flutes and clogging your cutter. But this threaded table is 13mm thick, just over half an inch, or 4 times the diameter of the cutter. Chips can easily get stuck in a hole that deep. So to mitigate that risk, it was essential that I use air blast to flush the holes of any chip accumulation. The first operation was to surface the back half of the threaded table, which I'd rotated 180 degrees for better visibility. This operation was programmed as a contour toolpath with multiple roughing stepovers. That way I could get more consistent toolpath marks versus a pocketing operation, and I didn't need to worry about how well a facing toolpath would stay within an arbitrary region. Because of the little chamfer I put at the corners of the raised section, I selected this contour boundary as an open chain, keeping only the straight line segment and adding some linear extension. If I didn't do that, that toolpath would look like this. I created a separate toolpath for the last pass of that contouring phase, and all of this went pretty smoothly. The next sequence of operations established the counterboard areas where my table would be mounted to the frame. I increased the lead-in parameters here to guarantee that my end mill would be plunging down and starting the cut from outside of the stock. Now it was time to swap in the 1/8" end mill to make the through holes. I took my time to make sure the air blast nozzle was centered on the end mill, aimed about 1/4 inch up the flutes. I don't really need the compressed air when the end mill first makes contact with the aluminum. I need it the most after the end mill is deeper in the material. The initial results were good. All of the holes were successfully milled to a partial depth, then the Shapeoko came around to finish the job. The interpolated boring I'm doing here is split into 2 phases. That gives the end mill a chance to retract halfway down, allowing the compressed air extra time and space to really evacuate the chips and minimize the risk of clogging the end mill in these deep holes. These last boring operations were meant to cut through the aluminum and about 1 millimeter into the MDF. This was necessary to create the clearance for the thread mill to start as close to the bottom of the holes as possible. I didn't want to mill too deeply into the MDF though because I hate marking it up, and if the thread mill doesn't cut a full thread starting right at the bottom surface, it wouldn't be a problem because I planned on chamfering these holes manually later. But I was getting ahead of myself. Nothing mattered if any of these 77 individual thread milling operations failed. This phase was a bit nerve-wracking, but there was literally nothing I could do. I didn't want to chase the end mill with a vacuum hose in case I got too close to the spindle. I already had the air blast pointed at the holes and the pressure cranked up. All I could do was watch and listen for the sounds of anything going wrong. But nothing went wrong. This process went super smoothly and the thread mill lived to whirl another day. And, of course, the most important part of any good project is the gratuitous application of chamfers. You'll notice here that some of the chamfers aren't as deep as others. I think that's because I was playing musical chairs with clamps to allow the Shapeoko to hit every side of the table, and the uneven clamping pressure created some tilting, but functionally it's not that big a deal. Other than that small cosmetic defect, I would call this job a complete success. When I got home, the first thing I did was clear out my CNC enclosure, which had been unceremoniously used as storage while I was waiting for my evil CNC plans to mature. And then I started laying out the parts to put together. And in addition to my extrusions, this frame would not be possible to put together without the Y-axis end plates. These parts were made for me by my friends over at Fabworks who specialize in on-demand laser cutting and metal finishing services at competitive prices. These guys have helped me out in the past and I've always been satisfied with the quality of their work. I know you're smart people, and I know you know that there are several options for similar services out there on the market. As a thank you to Fabworks, I just want to quickly shout out 2 of my favorite things about them. 1, they have an extremely good pipeline for processing 3D files. If you have a complex sheet metal part with bends, you don't need to flatten your design, export a DXF file from your CAD program, and then add bends back into the design manually after you upload it to a vendor's website. You just upload the step file and go. It works really well. And 2, Fabwork makes it really easy to generate a shareable link to your cart. This is great when you work in a larger organization, but you're not the final purchasing authority. You can focus on getting the details of the job correct, and then you send the cart to the guy or gal with the credit card. No need for manual reviews or approvals to generate a link. Stuff just gets done instantly. And now, as I'm editing this video, they've taken things a step further and added support for collaborative organizations, so if you work in a team, this is a pretty awesome platform. Thank you to Fabworks for these 5 plates. That last one is a spare, by the way. Now back to the assembly. The first thing I did was attach my Y-axis end plates to the Nomad tubes. I attached the screws loosely so I wouldn't mar the powder coating. These assembled parts would be able to stand up by themselves, so I was able to get them positioned pretty close to where I needed them, and then I carefully lowered in the Y-axis extrusions and pinned them with 2 screws apiece. Again, trying very hard not to damage the powder coating until I'm ready for final assembly. And now, with the frame holding its own shape, I could drop my threaded table gingerly on top and put screws in each of the counterboard holes, tightening them to within a quarter turn of snug, backing them off where necessary. Using calipers, I bumped and tweaked the relative position of the table and the front Nomad tube so that the two were parallel to within 0.02 millimeters over the width of the threaded table. I'm not German, so I'll call that good enough. I tightened the screws along the front and confirmed the alignment was still good. Then I lightly tightened the rest of the screws on the Y-axis end plates to take out the rest of the slop in the frame. This would draw the rear Nomad tube to be parallel to the front tube within the tolerance of the cut ends of the Y-axis extrusions, and then I could tighten down the mounting screws at the rear of the threaded table. And then, stepping back, I could admire the magnificence of this frame. The Nomad tubes rotated 90 degrees combined with a slab of aluminum absolutely do not care about any bow you have in your table or enclosure floor. They will not sag ever, at least not to any appreciable degree with any reasonable load that you would put on this machine. Short of bringing in 100 or so kilogram slab of granite to build a machine on, this is the most solid foundation a desktop CNC router could have. And my favorite part is it sings the song of its people, Big Stupid Aluminum. Oddly satisfying. Yeah, I know this technically means my table is resonating at some microscopic level, and I'll lose a couple microns of accuracy, but I'm not German, I'm not Swiss, this is more than good enough. And overall, I'm really happy with how this part of the build turned out. And I'm excited to start the next phase, which is, which is getting this gantry rail mounted on this frame. I want to thank you all very much for watching, and I'll be back soon with more CNC nonsense and DIY mayhem.